Kristi Noem reveals Trump's harsh warning to Iran. He will not tolerate this, whatever it is, which I suppose is them having a nuclear weapon, but whatever. Okay, so here it is. This is her. She went to Israel and
two Israeli embassy staffers fatally shot by and suspects screaming "Free Palestine" days before they were set to get engaged.
DHS Secretary Kristi Noem just met with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. She joins us now from Tel Aviv. So great to see you this morning, Madam Secretary. So tell us about your meeting with Bibi Netanyahu.
Well, I landed here in Israel late last night, went immediately to the Western.
She's the DHS Secretary for the United States of America. I'm just saying.
As you know, this is a time of celebration.
She's not Hegseth. She's not the Pentagon chief. She's not in defense. Like, she's the Homeland Security. Do you think Trump just promised her a trip?
In Israel. And also then after that, around 10 o'clock last night, went and met with Bibi, with the Prime Minister, and had a conversation about President Trump's negotiations with Iran. And had a conversation with him. President Trump specifically sent me here to have a conversation with the Prime Minister about how those negotiations are going.
Why? Why not Witkoff? Why not Hegseth? I mean, other than he's a drunk and a fool and he destroys everything he touches, just like Trump. Maybe she's the only one left?
And how important it is that we stay united and let this process play out. It was a very candid conversation. I've known the Prime Minister for many years and had many good conversations with him. But this was one directly from the President, and I think the Prime Minister greatly appreciated it. We spent today...
Yeah, oh, by the way, there's some talk about Trump stiff-arming Israel or stiff-arming Netanyahu, and looks like he's distancing himself and because he didn't make the trip when he came to the region. Let me be clear. The reason he's doing this is because it gives Israel enough room to do whatever they need to do, and he can be reactive. If they wanted to bomb Iran, we would dovetail behind them and help them. But if we were seen as hand in glove working with them to institute this, then Iran would declare, direct war and would have an arguable right to do so against the United States and Israel. If Israel strikes and we were, obviously coordinating it or something like that, Iran would declare war on both of us, and that would be in the international world a legit response, right? That would open us up to all kinds of awful. If we're not doing it and we're just like, we're having talks and we would rather them not, and we're keeping them at arm's length to some degree. If Israel does something, we're like, oh, we have to back our friends, but we don't have to actually be involved in the process. And if Iran declared war on both of us, you could argue that under international law, they'd have the right to attack Israel as if they've ever stopped, but they wouldn't have the right to attack the United States because we were just, that's just an ally, right? That's why you send Kristi Noem instead of the SecDef.
So out on the Gaza border, talking with some of the IDF soldiers and visiting with them with our great ambassador that we have here, Ambassador Huckabee, and since it's Memorial Day.
Ambassador Huckabee.
We also spend some time with our Coast Guard troops. We have many Coast Guard folks in the region that we've been able to visit and talk to them and thank them for their service.
When you say that you had a candid conversation, what can you kind of lay out the outlines of what was candid?
I'm not going to share what the president's personal message was to the Prime Minister, but the Prime Minister's team...
It did involve Trump, Gaza, the kind of there were some blueprints and some permitting applications.
A conversation afterwards with us that they don't remember a bilateral meeting that was quite that candid and direct, and about how we really felt about the importance of Israel, our support for Israel, but that this negotiation was critically important too. We're on a short time frame here as well. We aren't talking weeks and months and years before President Trump will make a decision on what's going to happen with Iran. They've been given a very short time frame, a matter of days, and I asked the Prime Minister to work with President Trump to make sure that we were making wise decisions together. Listen, this Hamas is a dangerous enemy that calls for Israel.
This is a diversion away from the fact that Trump sent that letter 2 months ago and the time has passed. Let's just clear the decks here. There's no matter of days, nothing. That whatever timeline he set for Iran has until now to officially declare they're not going to enrich uranium and they will allow inspectors into any nuclear system that they set up, and that any reactors will have outside fuel sources. They cannot enrich further, any of that stuff. Like, unless they do admit to that and allow these inspectors and allow the world in as of this date, he was going to just blow them up. He was talking that kind of incendiary language the entire fucking time. So it's just stupid. There is that time has finished. Oh, thank you so much. Hold on, who was that? Selma, thank you so much for the super chat. And Luis, thank you too. Bless you guys. Thanks. That means a lot.
Death, and for America's death every day. They have no place in this world. And when it comes to Hamas, they no longer should belong here. And the hatred that they've spewed on the Israeli people and the Jewish people is not acceptable to the Prime Minister or to President Trump. We need to always remember that. So that was the discussion there, and also giving us an opportunity to get out of this conflict that we have in Gaza is very important.
Madam Secretary, I'm sorry, because I don't want to go into the private conversation, but there is an element of this that
You kind of do, though, don't you?
has been quite public. And the U.S. is negotiating this deal with Iran, trying to get to some resolution. But the Israelis have made it very clear that they feel like an attack from Iran, or at least them getting the materials for a nuclear weapon, is imminent. And they plan to attack if that is the case. So I don't want you to get into the specifics.
Yeah, I've already told you what's going to happen. The reason she's not going to discuss this is that if they reach this certain date and you guys want to do it, we'll back you up, but we have to pretend we didn't. We have to act like we were caught off guard for all kinds of reasons. That's why these are verbal communications directly from the president's office. Her, no notes, no nothing. Go and just say it directly to Netanyahu. That's what this is. That's why it's a private, confidential, engagement between the two of them, because they don't want a paper trail that they are promising support when this happens.
Of the conversation as it relates to the president, the message that you had to deliver. But did you see Israel putting this on pause now, or they still have intentions to attack Iran?
We discussed Iran, and we discussed where Israel's position was, and I also delivered the message on where the president was. And the president will never accept a nuclear-capable Iran. He will never accept them.
Yeah, he gave them the go-ahead.
Nuclear weapons and building the capacity to that. The intelligence information that they have and that Israel has and they share with the United States and that we also have and are using for those conversations is critically important. So I think the message to the American people is we have a president that wants peace, but also a president that will not tolerate nuclear Iran capability in the future. They will not be able to get a nuclear.
He wants peace, but there's a shelf life on that peace, and once it gets a little green around the edges, we're going to nuke the shit out of him.
Weapon, and this president will not allow it. But he also wants to be he wants this Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to be on the same page with him.
Well, what does Israel want? You talked about this conversation with the Prime Minister. What does he want from the Iran deal? What did he tell you about what they would like to see accomplished in the deal?
Well, we talked about the track record with Iran. You can't trust them. We've got 46 years.
Right. So, first of all, Trump broke the last deal we had, and it was working. Secondly, you don't trust them. Well, then why would you make a deal with them anyways? And again, if you're going to do a trust but verify, that means that the line that is in this paperwork and that they discussed was they have to let everybody in, basically open the country up in a way that they know Iran will not or cannot, more to the point, do, so it guarantees them a window to strike. It's a matter of time.
Proof that you can't trust Iran. And Bibi doesn't trust them either. I don't blame him one bit. His people have been devastated by their horrific violence that they have perpetuated among their people. But he also needs America, and he knows he needs America, and he needs our president to be his ally and to work together. We are stronger when we are united, and that this.
So he's promising Trump a hotel. That's what we're talking about.
Something we will deal with together, but this conversation needs to be honest, frank, and we need to go forward recognizing that Iran will never have the capability to produce nuclear weapons.
Madam Secretary, real quick before I let you go, because there's this debate about the aid coming into Gaza. And I get it. And I think the Commander-in-Chief made it very clear. He heard from a lot of the folks in the Middle East, some of the kings that he was dealing with, the foreign leaders there, that they want the aid to come through. But there's also still the issue of Hamas taking the aid, and it's not getting directly to the people. So how do we balance wanting to be sympathetic for the cause as it relates to the children that are dying, but still you have a terrorist regime that is still in charge?
Yeah, absolutely. It is that aid many times that is funding Hamas. So we need to trust. We talked about this.
If the aid is funding Hamas, then Iran isn't funding the Hamas. If the whole point is Iran is behind them, and if Iran didn't have any money, they wouldn't be able to do this, then clearly that funding is not going anywhere. So what the fuck does this have to do with Iran at a certain point? You've just cut off the Iranian funds, so now Hamas is stealing the goods. Is that the idea? But they've been doing it all along, is the point. So obviously they acted outside the Iranian, I don't know, grip on them, or I guess their response, you know, the availability of those funds to pay for this kind of stuff. It's all, by the way, this is all flim-flam and horseshit. Again, what increasingly happened after 2005, when the Israelis pulled out of Gaza, when the internal occupation ended and they dug up all the dead Jews and they got everybody out and there are zero Jews, the shift for the two-state solution, which we all use the same language on, and this is like, these people are not helping. The problem is this is a very serious thing, and a bunch of inserious people talking about it. That after 2005, the two-state solution to Hamas specifically meant there would be one state, you know, if Israel existed, and they were still against it, but if it existed this way, if it worked out this way, where Jews would be allowed, and there would be a state where no Jews would be allowed. And increasingly, in a lot of these surrounding Arab countries, that has been the point over the last few decades. They've been increasingly squeezing the Jews out into Israel or out in, you know, into Europe or Africa, or just trying to dismiss them or killing them. And the same thing is, you know, is the issue that you have is that most people were talking about the two-state solution as if we were all talking about the same thing from like 1995. And the people in charge of what it would mean and what the definition of that two-state solution would be changed when Hamas took over. But the conversation around it at the UN and other places did not. That's one of the big problems. Also, there's been a lot of talk lately, and I had this kind of epiphany yesterday, or the day before yesterday, yeah. There's been a lot of talk about how Hamas uses human shields by tunneling under schools and hospitals and the like, which clearly exists. But I would argue it's not enough to blame Hamas for this, to just lay this at their feet. Because the UN did this. We, to some degree, by not paying enough attention, we tacitly did this. Because the UN, UNRWA, the United States, in some cases, knew that they were building these tunnels underneath the schools and hospitals and the like, and we did not leverage aid because, and I think it was largely out of our concern for the average citizens and the Palestinians and concern for their health and safety and well-being, and our own empathy was weaponized in this situation, and the UN was part and parcel to it. That the UN was complicit in the use of people as human shields. Because they knew. Inside UNRWA especially. They knew. So, and I also have this weird thing about like the discussing of like Hamas and the language around all this stuff seems, there's one particular like hang up that I've had a lot lately as the conversation has continued, especially like somebody was like holding up the Palestinian state flag at the UN, and they were referring to it as the Palestinian state flag as if there is a state already, which would mean Gaza and the West Bank, I would presume, unless they're assuming the elimination of Israel and they're just calling that area Palestine, and that's the flag for the real country that's under Israel's feet right now or some bullshit. But insofar as how the UN says it, they call it the UN state flag. If that's the case, if they're recognizing it as a state flag, and they're recognizing Hamas as the elected government of the Gazans, of the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip, then this is not a war against terror on Israel's part. It's just a war between countries by every definition. Yes? We have an interesting troll. Well, we always have interesting trolls. That's the anything, you know, particularly fun. Well, now since they gutted Palestine, well, again, terminology aside, there is no like. There's an existential Palestine, which again comes from the word Philistine, which the Romans called it, and was the British Protectorate. That country's name was the British Protectorate for all practical purposes. So the point I'm trying to make is yes, Hamas definitely sucks. Is that the language around this is done as almost like a rogue state in terms of how it's addressed, and therefore it paints the Israelis as particularly guilty because it's their government forces, the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces. But the Hamas fighters are seen as terrorists, when in reality they are the military arm of Hamas, which is the elected government of Gaza, which, according to the UN, has a state flag. So it's just weird that the languaging around this, because if you do that, then it gets a lot more even and a lot quicker about who picked a war between who, and that the state already exists and they recognized it already and that kind of stuff. It's just a thing they throw out the window in this conversation. The problem I have is that we have a lot of well-meaning people and malign actors talking about these things. The discussion is happening between both of these people, and neither of these groups seem capable of processing the complexity of the issue and getting through it. That it's just no flag, no country. That is my rule. Right. Well, again, flag is a representative symbol of something. It is up to the people of that country whether that flag means something valuable. Tickle a troll, get a giggle. Yes, well, we like trolls. We welcome the trolls in here. How come no costume for Israel puppy killer? No, she wore a headscarf and she'd wear a full head wrap or whatever, but she was definitely dressed up at one point. That was when she was, not when she was on Fox News, but when she went down to the Wailing Wall and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So I'm just saying, if the UN, this is the problem with the current state of the UN, and I would argue that this is China and Russia fucking around with things, because there's the idea that Russia or China belong in the Human Rights Council is just fucking insane. Like, what are you talking about? One invaded multiple sovereign countries and continues to, and the other one had sterilization camps for the Muslim population in a huge section of the country. Like, the fuck out of here. So they design it so that it takes something that's already complex and has a social aspect of it and makes it legally and politically complex so it can remain unsolved. There are malign actors and true believers that are both equally responsible for fucking this thing up, because they're not as smart as they think they are, and and all of their fallbacks suck. So that part's been bothering me lately. If the UN recognizes the Palestinian flag as a state flag, and they call it the state of Palestine, that means it's a country that exists in the current territories it has, namely Gaza, but the West Bank as well. And if Hamas is the officially recognized elected government, they're not you could call them a state sponsor of terror if they're paying for the people around them that attack and did October 7th, which they clearly did. Or you could just say those were Hamas soldiers. Those are Palestinian soldiers that attacked that music festival then. Right? Just because they don't have uniforms. Hamas was elected. Those guys are paid, trained by Hamas. They were supplied by Hamas. Right? It's just weird. Like the way we're talking about this is this kind of like militia idea versus an organized force. And the only difference seems to be that one group has uniforms and no child soldiers, and the other side is like, uniforms. It's easier for us to write off the dead if you don't know who was a fighter and who wasn't. Right? Why should Palestinians ever join the state of Israel when they are native? Why should they care if it's called Israel versus Palestine if they're native any more than the local Arabs and Jews from that area? what's the difference if it's called Israel and you have the right to vote and you participate in the democracy? What you mean is, why should Palestinians ever give in as long as there are any Jews in that area, I think. Because that's the only difference right now. And again, this is not the 1990s two-state solution that a lot of us were focused on for a very long time. Steve, no, you're dead wrong on this subject. No, I am not. Yeah. Countries have the right to defend themselves. I agree. So Israel has the right to defend itself. And if this was a preemptive attack from Gaza as a Palestinian country, then they declared war on somebody and the war came to their doorstep. But again, part of this is about the conversation about whether it's a terrorist organization, which is sort of like off the map in terms of, who they are as an organization. When they are in, Hamas was elected. There were elections. After they were elected, the party that lost, the Fatah people, they threw them off of rooftops, chopped their heads off and shot them in the street, rounded up their families and slaughtered them so that there wouldn't be another group that would fight against them. But that's how they remained in power. Very, very Saddam Hussein, right? Very Uday and Qusay. But then they decided to attack Israel. And the idea is that because it was so ragtag that it wasn't officially an army. And yet, if Hamas is the legit government and those fighters are paid for and trained by Hamas, just because they don't have uniforms doesn't mean they're not soldiers for the country, right? I'm just saying if the difference right now seems to be that the weight is on Israel more because their soldiers have uniforms. That seems to be right now the standard that people have. I just find it all. Everybody is undermining the depth of the importance of this conversation. A terroristic army. Well, again, you're right, Revenge Millennium. It is a complex problem. I agree. And it should be addressed as a complex problem, not oversimplified by true believers who are like, history started on October 7th or or October 7th was a natural extension of history. Either one of those points is fucking stupid. And it seems like we're talking about the people controlling the argument about this are largely those two groups. Right? It wasn't viewed as an official army. Right, I agree, Joy. And I would argue that it should be. Hamas's fighters should be viewed as official soldiers, no matter who they are. If they trained, and we know they trained for October 7th for weeks. There's videos that after the attack, Hamas posted the videos of their soldiers planning these attacks and even wearing civilian clothes during the attack on purpose, right? That was a military decision. Just like, an undercover cop is still a cop, even if they're wearing street clothes, right? So if you train in a uniform and then you take off your uniform for the attack, you're still a national soldier. Right? And so it just seems like that part of it is a missing thing. It gives this illusion of ragtag on the part of Hamas when they are obviously backed by Iran and their soldiers are trained by them. There are training camps within Gaza. We've known this. They're proud of it. If you look at, and I tend not to really have any conversations with anybody about this past a certain point who hasn't seen the October 7th video that Hamas posted themselves. If you don't have the nerve to watch all of that, don't come to me about how you think people should be treated in this situation. If you're not willing to look at it, if you aren't willing to look at all that stuff and go, this was a planned attack by a military that was funded by the elected government of that area, because that's what it was. And it's a lot to take in. How would Iran, Mr. Howell, Iran would never nuke Israel, not when there are 2 million Palestinians in the firing line. The Israelis know that. No, that's not true, Tom. They would, they talk about how many they would martyr. There's a video of one of the Hamas guys going, if it, everyone in Gaza is ready to be martyred, so that Israel can be wiped out. So no, and again, I don't think the people want that. I think if you took a vote, they'd go, "What the fuck are you talking about?" But the people in charge, the Hamas leaders and the Iranians who feed them, that's, by the way, the Hamas leaders, the actual leaders of Hamas, don't fucking live in Gaza. They live in Qatar, in the lap of luxury. So I don't think they're worried, right? I think the best chance you have for Iran not nuking Israel is the Temple, right? Is the Temple Mount, is the, because it's such an important religious site. They'd sooner nuke Mecca in a lot of ways. But there are areas around there that you could hit with a tactical nuke and they wouldn't care. I did not watch it. I don't need to. Yeah, well, and that's, nobody has to. But I am telling you, if you're going to dive into the depth of this or defend what happened on October 7th or, like Hamas Abi does, I really don't feel like, yes, Qatar that just gifted the plane. Exactly, Diane. I don't tend to entertain people to have a deep conversation about this who haven't seen that footage. Because all of them talk about this in the most lightweight way until then. Like I'm surprised I'm always surprised when people don't know. But I'm going to see if I can find something for you. Let's see. Where is it? Would it be in my... let's see this. Trying to find this footage. Let's see. Today, yeah, maybe this is it. Yeah, I had a posted piece of footage from Hamas at one point because they were pushing back on the idea that Hamas is responsible for starving people. So they were starting to post videos of the markets inside Gaza, the ones they run, by the way, that have plenty of supplies. You just have to buy them from them. The free aid that comes from the U.S. and from Israel, they sell in the marketplace. They seize the trucks and then they sell it in this market. Yeah, this is okay. Well, that's an older one, but I'll put that up there, and it wouldn't be today. Let's see. I'm going to try and find this by the time. Let's see, this month. At this. That'll be the wrong one. Hold on. This is 4 weeks ago. I want to make sure this is. Yeah, this is. I think this is the one they're talking about. Yeah. So this is a market in Gaza. And if this isn't the the exact time, because this is supposedly a couple weeks ago. This is 4 weeks ago. That they posted this, like the goods for sale in Gaza, food wise, and what they do is they get stuff from the aid trucks and other sources. Some of it tunneled in via Egypt or whatever, but also mostly stuff claimed there, and then they just resell it in the market. And so the idea was that Hamas was posting these videos of the markets going, the world is lying, our people are not starving, Hamas did this, and we're great, and we did it great. And every time people were telling the world that that Hamas is stealing the aid. They're like, we're selling the aid and we're doing it to help, whatever. So they pushed back. So Hamas was so offended by people thinking that the Palestinians didn't have enough food and that they were starving, and they were like, we got plenty of food. We don't need you fuckers. So they started posting videos like this. I actually think ego is more important than anything else. Alexa, I completely agree. I mean, I think you've heard me talk about like school shooters and mass shooters, and even that dickhead who shot that couple in front of the Israeli museum. Let me tell you something. None of those fuckers care about the cause that they purport to care about. Whether it was the Unabomber, any of these fuckers. It's about them. It's about their right to live. Their ideas are more important than your beating heart. That's it. That's the ego. That's the ego. Please speak on the bill, please. Yes. Well, okay. Sorry. We'll get to that. You're right. I got diverted from that, but we'll go to this. Yeah. So let me jump over to that real quick. Just an important thought. Here's the thing. Take what I'm telling you about and incorporate it into your thought. And it doesn't have to take over. I'm not trying to bend your mind in one direction or another. I'm just pointing out some discrepancies in the conversation I'm hearing about this stuff that undermines the depth of conversation that need be had. Yeah, healthy egos, nothing wrong with that. I'm talking about like the egomaniacal, the inference of my life is more important than yours. My views are more important than yours. My pain is more important than your life. That's what all this shit is about. It's just that guns make it more whimsical to act on. But in China, we see this all the time with revenge against society murders, where people slash up kids at schools or stab people on the street. They have these mass stabbings in China. It's the same thing, and it's this person thinking, "Fuck you, world, I'll show you," and it's all about them. It's ego. That's why coveting is one of the 10 commandments. It's not envy. Envy can be very positive. You can envy, go, wow, I wish I had a house like that. Wow, I wish I had a car like that. Wow, I wish I had a motorcycle like that, or a cool microphone like that. I don't know, whatever. You know what I mean? Like that's envy. Covet is, I want that car. I want his house. I want her car. I want their jewelry. That's coveting. That's why it's different, because it leads to a lot of stuff. Coveting often leads to murdering somebody for their shit. Coveting often leads to theft and assault, right? It's very different in that regard, right? So is aid blocked or just being intercepted and sold at the marketplace? Okay, so aid has started going back in, but the Israelis are creating these zones where they can get the aid directly to the people. I got news for you. It's still going to get stolen, because these people are going to walk away, and then the Hamas guys are going to meet them around the corner and threaten them and take the shit from them. That's more than likely. They're trying to give it out in little doles so that it would be too complicated to get it from everybody. But anybody with a cart's fucked. So the aid was stopped for a time. But what they don't tell you was there was enough aid up to that point to get to July. They're always ahead of it. And they paused it during this time because Hamas was stealing it, and they're trying to find a better way to get it to the actual people, because they were selling it in a marketplace inside there. So, and again, what would you do in that circumstance? Would you go, well, fuck it, that's the inside of their thing, they voted Hamas in. If Hamas sells it, back to them, I can't tell you. I just dumped the aid in there. It's not my fault if they starve some kids for lulz and clicks. What do you do? What would you do? Right? Bullshit. You see the cages. Those were chain link lanes to get the people organized into areas. They weren't caged. They had to enter through a lane to get stuff and get out. I mean, it's how do you create a queue in a situation like that? And again, what's the alternative? Just dump the shit and go, hey, if these people are fine with Hamas selling their shit back to them, what's no business if they, and again, Hamas starves and kills people on purpose and then holds up dead kids and goes, this kid was shot. This kid was starved. And they did it. There was a kid with cerebral palsy in one of the hospitals that they had, that to get to the weight they'd been at right after October 7th, they would have had to have been starving for weeks before then. And when they were brought into the hospital, and they just went look what's happening now. And it was obviously something that had been going on for a long time, even if that, and we don't even know because nobody can check if that kid was actually from then, right? That's the problem, right? You give them a cooked meal like Hurricane, right? So the point I'm trying to make is the primary conversation I would like people to factor in. And you don't, again, I'm not asking you, I'm asking you to divine for yourself what you think a solution would be, not just the best target of blame. And in these circumstances, what solution would you come up with for this particular instance? You know, this is like when Cenk's nephew was saying, you know, the Houthis taking people prisoner. What would you do if you saw a genocide? Well, I wouldn't take Chinese soldiers hostage. Or not even soldiers, sailors, civilians. I would not take Chinese civilians on a boat that was like chartered from Russia to China hostage. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't think that that would help. I wouldn't even think that would be, you know, that's like, if you don't stop fucking around, I'm going to punch this guy you don't even know. It's bizarre. I would not do that. Even if you did something, it wouldn't be that. Right? So the point I'm trying to make is if the UN says it's a flag of a real state, they're arguing the state already exists, which would be Gaza territories in the West Bank. Secondly, if Hamas is the elected government, calling them a terrorist organization is underselling what they actually did. The people of Gaza elected them, and then they watched as they threw the other party members from the other competing party off a fucking roof, and that was the last election they had. And then the Hamas fighters, therefore, are the army of Gaza. They are an actual army, just because they trained in uniform and they attacked in civies. Writing it off as terrorism, I think, waters it down with the fucking Middle East, right? And it kicks in all kinds of people's like soft racism of low expectations to straight up just hating Muslims in general, or this idea that it's always going to be bad because religion, right? It allows this part of your brain to just write it off. But if it's state against state and it's army against army, it's a lot easier to digest and start working towards, right? And then you're negotiating on a more level playing field in your head, at least. So anyways, I'm throwing that out there, right? Biden publicly stated you cannot trust Netanyahu. Republicans and MAGA say in public Netty is great. Yes, I agree. Why did China drop ship food? Because they, you mean in Israel? Because the same reason everybody else in the UN did. We coordinated it. Your take on the elections is pretty simplistic. Sorry, are they not the government, the elected government? Of course they are. Did they not kill the Fatah members in large part after they won the election? Of course they did. After that, it's academic. You tend to, it's when you talk about human lives or votes, that's gravity. That's physics. Yeah. They were elected 20 years ago, dude. Yes, and they've been in ever since. That's right. In 2005, that's exactly when I said. Ever since then, I would say prior to when they got elected, the two-state solution was a more even-keeled idea that there may be diverse populations in either place as long as they, view themselves as Palestinian, which a lot of Jews did, because that's what the Romans named that area. But after 2005, it was Palestine will not include any Jews. Israel has never said Israel will not include any Arabs. They get to serve in they get to vote. They get to be part of the electorate. Right? That's different. That's a distinction. And either that distinction means something to you or it doesn't. That's up to you. So, yeah, there you go. Hamas is MAGA. I don't know. That's an oversimplification. But I hear what you're saying. All right. So, anyways, what it is that they're religiously conservative, belligerent, egomaniac assholes. Sure, go with that. I know what the 1995 two-station solution is. Right. Well, that's the idea. It's different than after 2005. Yeah. Alien Fields likes to throw around the clown thing because he thinks that, just so you know, he thinks that undermines your argument and dismisses everything you have to say or your empathy or caring for the circumstance or your actual attention to that with a simple emoji. And it's just, it's fantastic work. And I'm sure it's doing great work all over the internet. But I want to thank the trolls that are here because you help us in the algorithm in a way that nobody else can.